Did you know there is positive and negative adoption language? We're going to talk about that today on All About Adoption. Hi, if we have not met yet, I'm Stephanie A. I'm the founder and executive director here at Adoption and Beyond and wearer of many hats. And I help hopeful adoptive families bring home the child of their dreams. So we're going to talk about some of the positive and negative adoption language. So I want to tell you that adoption language is very fluid, just like whatever's politically correct in the past is not politically correct anymore. So as the recording of this video, these are the languages that are considered negative and positive, understanding once again that language is fluid. So one of the biggest changes here recently is that not calling a birth mother until she has placed the child for adoption. Prior to that, she is simply an expecting parent. So it was very common for us to use the word birth mother regardless of when it happened. We are still doing that with the language of adopting families. We're still calling them adopting families before and after. We're kind of moving away from that a little bit, and they're now called hopeful adoptive parents versus adoptive parents. So that's pre and post, and expecting parents is pre and post is birth parents. Because the reason for that with regards to birth parents is that there felt like there was a sense of you're already making the assumption that she is going to place the child for adoption, and that decision is not made until she actually signs her paperwork. So prior to that, she's just a mom who is pregnant. So it's important that we honor these languages and understanding whose role is what, to not put in any perceived pressure on anyone through the adoption process. And also kind of along the lines of birth parents versus real parents. Birth parents is a more appropriate language because any parent who's parenting is the real parent. Biological versus natural parent. So biological is the most appropriate language to use versus natural, because if the birth family is natural, then that means the adoptive family is unnatural. And so usually it's biological family is the correct language to use. So then there's the term parent versus adoptive parent. So the most appropriate word is just parent. When you're a parent, you're the parent. Regardless if you're a step parent, an adoptive parent, you are the parent. So be sure that we use, you don't go around saying, I am this person's adoptive mom. You go around and you're the parent. You're the mom. Intercountry versus foreign adoption. Intercountry is a more appropriate word to use versus foreign, because foreign just sounds like it's a foreign concept and it's a foreign country. So intercountry adoption is the most appropriate term to use between those two. So this one's interesting. One is adoption triad versus adoption triangle. I feel it's adoption constellation versus adoption triad or adoption triangle. The adoption constellation implies the adoption triangle or the adoption triad infers that there's only just the birth family, the adopting family, and the child, and that's simply not true. There is other extended birth family, there's other extended adopting family in addition. So it's really more of an adoption constellation versus the triangle. So when an adult adoptee, or not even an adult, but an adoptee, when they are trying to search for the birth family, that's a more appropriate term than tracking them down. Tracking them down just sounds like you're, getting ready to attack them. You're going to track them down and attack them. And searching is that you're seeking out information, and so you're searching for your birth family. A child placed for adoption versus an unwanted child. Unwanted child is just such a negative word to use. A child placed for adoption shows that there was a plan made for that child. So here's one that's kind of fluid. A child with special needs versus a handicapped child. So a child with special needs is a more appropriate term to use. However, there is a movement towards moving away from the word special needs and saying that they have special abilities. And so you're going to find that that term's a little more fluid, and it will be interesting to see kind of where that shakes out. But right now, at this point in time, the word special needs is still appropriately used because it's in our diagnoses. As a social worker, it's in our diagnoses, and the word special needs is used, but more people are moving towards using the word special abilities. Was adopted versus is adopted. Adoption is an event. It's a one-time event, and when that occurs, it's no longer is. So, a lot of times people say that adoption's a lifelong journey, but ultimately adoption is an event that occurred. It's a legal process. So it was something that was in the past, and that was adopted is a more appropriate term to use. So I'm curious to know what terms you have heard in the past and now, and which one you think is the most appropriate one to use. So thank you so much for joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Be sure you hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate that so much. Thank you so much.